Thank you for joining us on the first episode of Unsuited by a collaboration between the Grey Matter and Ibex Legal. We've been pretty aggressive and innovative with our marketing, so I'm sure you know who our very first guest is. He's on your screen right now. We all know the large deals he's done and closed and the clients he's charmed. But let's find out how the sides that we really get to witness. Let's welcome our very first guest, Rajiv Luthra, founding and managing partner, L&L Partners, but not in suits today. Welcome, Rajiv. Welcome, and thank you for being the first guest on Unsuited by the Grey Matter and Ibex Legal. How are you doing?
Good, my friend. Thank you very much. Bakra bana rahe ho, abhi banao. Let's see how it goes.
Well, thank you for being part of the first experiment for us. So this is really about getting to know lawyers beyond the corporate veil. So really about, we all know about the work you've done, the career you've had, but we really want to get the community to know other sides of you that they may not know. So, I'm going to start with you back at college, because you've told me some of the interesting stories of when you were at college and your entrepreneurial journey. So let's look at, where did Rajiv Luthra come about when he was college?
So I'll just go a little bit before that to give you a little flavor. My father was in the Air Force, and he got transferred to many different cities, and I studied in many schools. So it did help me many ways in picking up, easier to make friends. It was much easier to deal with different sorts of people from South India to Pune, to Chandigarh, to Kanpur, to Jaipur, Delhi, of course. And so we kept getting transferred and moved around. And then finally, Dad settled down in Delhi. He took premature retirement. And I did my final schooling from the Air Force Central School in Delhi. Finished school, I dare say, not great marks. Nowadays, I wouldn't even get admission in college if I showed my school marks. But went on very quickly to get articled in a chartered accountant's office. That was my father qualified as a chartered accountant before he joined the Air Force. So he set up his CA practice with a friend, and I started doing my articles with him. And at a very young age, at the age of roughly about 16 plus, I'm one of the younger registered chartered accountants in the history of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, I believe. And found the whole process of chartered accountancy, especially audit, and my apologies to all the chartered accountants, complete brain dead activity. I just couldn't handle it. But I did it for about 7-8 years because my father's partnership broke in the middle and I was the eldest son. Though Dad was a lovely human being and he said, son, you do what you want to do. So I did various things as a youngster, tried my hand at many different things, and I was always wanting to do things that I enjoyed doing. For example, I set up, along with 3 other friends from school, an adventure travel company, pure adventure travel, called Ibex Expeditions. And that company we set up, and today I'm happy to tell you that it's in the top 100 adventure travel companies of the world, as per National Geographic. Thereon, I started working with a friend of mine who just returned from Japan, an Indian, who set up the Wimpy hamburger chain in India. He made me the first finance director of that company at the age of 22, I think I was. And we opened this restaurant where, of course, beef was a no-no in India. And I helped them figure out what a veg burger is from Bengali market and Shah Jahan Road, the Aloo Ki Tikki Wala. And we made the first veg burger, so to speak, of the world, and it's been very successful since, and some of you may have tasted it.
Well, on that point, so I'll just cut you off there. So I used to come to India every year to visit my cousin, and we used to go to that Wimpy in Connaught Place. because that was like the only place to go out. And I used to complain, going, why is it only veg? Like in London, we get meat. Why can we only get veg burgers?
No, we got meat. You got meat, but mutton,
but
not beef.
Yeah.
You got mutton, and you
But
got fish, and you got
yeah.
chicken, but there was no beef. Anyway, found auditing very, very boring. Shifted to tax. My elder sister, Rashmi Uday Singh, was in the revenue service and practiced tax. Enjoyed that a lot. It was good fun till about the mid 80s or a little bit later, 85, 86. The tax department started to get a little more corrupt than what I was used to, and it all became a lot about who you know rather than what you know. And also, I had rights of audience only up to the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal. I couldn't argue the matter beyond that, but I had no rights of audience in the High Court or Supreme Court. So I decided to do my law. I did my law at the age of 31 and set up my law firm in 1989-90 and started to grow the firm, and then realized that my knowledge of law was almost bereft, because I just mugged up from the books and passed the exam. And I'd never trained, I'd never interned, I'd never worked with a lawyer. So I decided to go to Harvard Law School in summer. I went for 7 summers to Harvard Law School and learned things like project finance, things like M&A, things like negotiation, things like even trial law, etc., more generic stuff relevant to the Indian system. And came back and would teach my guys and slowly built the firm to today where we are. I really started it virtually on a motorcycle and a wish. I had a small office in Ashoka Estate building, 1,500 square feet. We built that today we have roughly, I would say, about 60,000 in the same building, 4 offices, about under 300 lawyers and about 80 partners. And that's where we are.
And was it mainly that thing about you wanted to appear in the court to argue a judgment? Was that the kind of driving force for choosing to get into law? Because you had no mentors and there was no one in the family that was a lawyer. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. I started enjoying the whole concept of being able to contribute, because I found that as an auditor, I was just being, sorry to say it like that, apologies again to my chartered accountant friends. My younger brother is a chartered accountant, runs a CA practice, but apologies to all of them, including my late father. Auditing, I found, was you were only checking what the other person was doing wrong. You weren't adding any value in real terms. If you did 1,000 things right, it didn't matter. You did one thing wrong and there was a hit on the knuckles or more. So in there I found in law, it was like in tax, there was a little bit of creativity. There was a little bit of, you could give solutions, you could build things in. And what I enjoyed about law was that you could come up with solutions, and it was a different issue almost every hour. And luckily, being the head of the firm and the founder, I could choose what I wanted to do. The more mundane and boring stuff I could hand over to my youngsters.
And what was it like? Because you also started at a very exciting time for the Indian economy, like the early 90s, when liberalization was kicking in. Obviously, India had got to a big economic crisis that forced the government to open the market, but then saw this whole wave of liberalization. So what was it like setting up a business and especially a law firm during that era?
Firstly, law is not a business, unfortunately, or fortunately, it's a profession. Sorry to correct you, Vikas.
Sorry,
but no. It's become a business now, so what the hell?
Yeah.
So that's what everybody says. But I still believe it's a profession, and integrity and ethics is a very important part of it. So, sorry, your question was? I missed.
It was really about what was it like setting up your own practice during the early 90s when the whole economy had just switched, markets had liberalized, you had all these reforms coming in. So what was it like setting up firm that time?
I've got many awards, many magazines, various chambers and various others have interviewed me and said, what a visionary. I didn't know anything else. And I just happened to be there in 89, 90, and that's when India opened up. There was nothing known as project finance in India. There was nothing known as mergers and acquisitions. One of the earliest mergers and acquisitions that was done in our country was Coca-Cola bought Parley. And I happened to be Parley's lawyer for that early M&A transaction. And that sort of started to build things from one thing to the other. And I've even got an award from our former Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, and our former Chief Justice to being a visionary international transaction lawyer. So, you know, these guys also make mistakes. So
And then one of the other things I wanted to move on to, because you, as well as being a lawyer, and in that time developing your business from, as you said, being a lawyer on a motorbike to what is today a 400 lawyer plus firm, 80 partners. You're also still involved and interested in many other business pursuits. You know, like you're part of the Pandey Foundation with Amir Khan Kiran Rao. You were one of the co-founders of the Pro-Kabaddi League. You're also on the Coventry Calling Project. How do you end up, you know, as well as being a managing partner, also involved with such diverse projects? And how do you get the time to manage all that?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm not, as far as, let's go one by one. As far as I'm concerned, law is my first priority. My firm is my first priority by all counts. But since, you know, I'm one of those few seniors, there may be many more, I don't know many, that the senior, especially in the practice of law, has a tendency not to teach his or her juniors everything, because then they become redundant. My logic is totally different. If I teach everything I know, then I can play golf and they can work. So unfortunately, it doesn't happen as much as it should, because I keep on building newer areas of practice. And since I didn't have the pedigree or the credibility, I had to keep on, I had to strive very hard, but I enjoyed every second of it. I don't think, I mean, if you were to ask me on a serious note, I don't think I worked for a day, because it was pure enjoyment. I enjoyed every second of it, setting up things, building them. We saw, you know, where we started project finance in 92. I mean, India did not know the spelling of project finance at that time. We started doing M&A in 92, 93. Very few law firms had even looked at those areas. So we were quite lucky. We started insurance. We started competition, the antitrust stuff, 4 or 5 years before it became, you know, the law even got its teeth. But that's how I built the firm. And of course, me is just one guy. It's really the real wo karwa banta gaya, log aate gaye, and you know, good quality people. I've been blessed, very, very good quality, very hardworking people. So one day I will play golf.
Good. And then talking about working hard, you know, what's your kind of philosophy, viewpoint on, given you manage a lot as well, work-life balance? So we, you know, especially with today's generation, we hear a lot of conversation about, you know, we need to get the work-life balance, right? But what's your viewpoint on that, especially as it seems you work a lot? So is it a myth or is it reality?
I'll tell you, well, again, when you say work-life balance, I hear it all the time. In fact, it's coming out of my ears, especially the millennials. I don't blame them. It's there's nothing wrong with them. It's every generation has its own set of quirks, and this lot also has them. The difference is that when you say work-life balance, it sort of tends to insinuate that work is boring and life is fun. If you found work interesting and fun, then you wouldn't need a work-life balance. Having said that, to widen your horizons, because lawyers tend to get very myopic very quickly. It's very important to keep different hobbies, different interests, different areas. So you keep widening your horizons all the time. It also helps you professionally. Now, you talked about Pro-Kabaddi League, for example. It was Mr. Anand Mahinda and Charu Sharma. Charu was a junior of mine in college and a very, very dear and close friend. And we were thinking, I mean, Anand, etc., were thinking of setting up a football league and a badminton league. And I said, why don't we build something on an Indian sport? I won't tell you which one of them said. They said, why don't we do Kho-Kho? I said, that must be the most boring thing on earth. So, Kabaddi was something I had played as a youngster in school. And I thought that would be an interesting thing to do. And then we built this league. We still own a part of it. We've sold a large part of it to the broadcasters, etc., so that they could put in the real money. We put in very little money, but we still own the league even today, a reasonable part of it. I'm not involved in running it at all, never was. I just conceptualized it, put some money, of course, the legal documents and all of that, agreements, blah, 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 and conceptualized the whole thing, and then introduced the various people to buy the teams, etc. So that was my only thing. I've never really been involved in the management of it at all. Similarly, Pani Foundation, Amir Khan is a very dear friend, and so is his wife Kiran. And we were chatting, I'd worked with him a little bit on the Satyamev Jayate program of his, and I thought-seeded a few programs, and one of them was, harassment of young kids. And I said the best way to do this, do a program that what is the right touch, what is the wrong touch, and then things like, more practical things like, what happens when your daughter or son tells you it's the uncle? How does the mother handle that conversation? It's the mama or the chacha. Then how do you handle it? What is the way you... So those kinds of things we were doing. And then I was telling Amir, I said, "Tune bahut kaam kar liya." He's a dear friend for a long, long time. Abhi tum kuch desh ke vaste karo. So water was a big issue in Maharashtra, if you remember, about 6 years ago. And so that's where it thought seeded, and then one thing led to the other. So we ended up creating Pani Foundation, which today has become a kind of a people's movement. My next sort of mountain to climb is to try and create a regiment in the armed forces for water management, so that every unit in the armed forces will have a water management regiment or some officers and men, which will create and solve the problem with water. Similar thing happened with Sadhguru Jaggi Vasudev when we were talking about flowing rivers. And that's also our firm and me, we got together, we strategized that how we can make the policy for Government of India. We also worked with the Prime Minister and a few other ministers in his cabinet, especially the Environment Minister. And that's where we started trying to see how we can do that. And Sadhguru went from all the way from Coimbatore to Leh on this sector to try and sensitize people on what is a flowing river. In fact, my two daughters, Sana and Arshia, at that time, I think they were 6 and 7 years of age, and my wife, who's a car rallyist enthusiast, actually went for a part of the way with Sadhguru. I just got the credit.
And even in conversation with you, many on a separate point now, moving on from that many people know that Rajiv is quite a jovial character, very light, very witty, almost very different to the stereotype we have of what a lawyer is, which is should be stern and professional and not someone who's joking around and that. It's a very serious profession. How do you manage to keep that lightness about you, in a profession that doesn't seem to take it so seriously?
I'll tell you, I think life is too short to be just, sucking at a lemon all the time. I think it's important to keep things as light. Well, if I have to be serious, I am. And believe me, you should chat with some of the people in my office. They can tell you that we don't recognize you, sir, type of thing. But if I have to, and especially when I'm negotiating, etc., I'm reasonably serious. But I also put in a little lighter banter to keep things alive. I also feel, I've been through a lot in life and seen many, many things. In fact, I've had a very serious accident just around the time I set up my farm. I got split in an elevator like a chicken in two. And twice the ice came. I was declared twice, but I would get warm again and then get back. And I've seen all that. So that also taught me that, what is the big power we guys have? I didn't have the power to press the remote button to change the channel on television. So it got to that level. And then, it's the longest story, but a wonderful, I'd hate anybody to get accident like that. But that was such a serious accident. And I was, just to give you a quick snapshot, I was about nearly 94 days in hospital. And about 23 of them were daily operations, about minimum 7 hours each. In fact, the wonderful surgeon in Calcutta, Dr. Darai Sanklasaria, who saved my life, he gave up all his patients for nearly 2 months. And I was his sole patient. And I'm happy to tell you that this wonderful man and the genes he has created, his daughter right now is in Los Angeles running a COVID hospital there. She's the director of the ICU. She's 7 months pregnant and she's in hospital every day.
Wow.
That is the man and that is the family. And then I came out of it. Of course, humor kept me going because my mother is, again, most of it comes from her. For example, I was holding my left leg on my shoulder. It was broken in two. And I had 105 temperature. I was lying in bed, could hardly talk, and they had to take out all my blood. I got gas gangrene, which is very few people survive from that. So they had to transfuse my entire blood in my body 3 times. They took it all out, put fresh blood in, took it all out, put fresh blood in. My mother walks into the room after my transfusion is complete and says, "Beta, ab tu mera khoon nahi raha." So and my younger brother, who's a golfer, I had gone to Calcutta to play golf for 2 days. I had taken my golf set with me. Of course, the family back home in Delhi heard that I'd almost gone. So, whatever flight they could catch, whatever slippers they were in, they got onto planes and came to Calcutta. And this was December. This was 8th of December, 1990, when I had my accident. And this was the golfing season in Calcutta. The East India Cup and the All India Amateur was being played at that time. And my brother is a gold medalist in the Asian Games and a really good golfer, but he hadn't got his golf set. So he arrived, my golf set was there. So he saw I was getting better or whatever and whatever is going to happen. So he went off to play golf and he won a few golf tournaments. And he eats a lot. So he walks up to my doctor one day, and the doctor's walking around. And I was, lots of anesthesia, this, that. And he tells the doc, he says, "When will Rajiv start jogging?" So doc said, "Look, the next 5 years he'll be a vegetable. Then 3-4 years he'll be about to walk. And then maybe 10 years later he'll jog." He says, "Oh, that is fantastic. He's never jogged before." So that keeps your positiveness, humor, it keeps things going. And that was a very, very serious set of operations, I would say.
So is that really part of the, the family environment you were saying? Like it is quite a serious, but you also got to keep lighthearted and look at the positives as well throughout life.
Yeah, I'll tell you, you can imagine what my family was going through while there were doctors were saying 1 hour at a time. And my wife, young wife, mother, father, brother, I think he was married then. I don't think he was married. He was married. He was married. His wife, who actually my wife's real sister, younger sister, and what they were going through standing around outside, and the family and the relatives. A lot of my friends came from overseas because they all thought it's now bye-bye time.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that positive vibes, I think, kept the whole story going, in my view.
And have you managed to jog after that?
You know, I have a very simple philosophy in life that exercise killed no one, but why take a chance?
All right, so I'll take that as a no, risk adverse.
No, it's not a no.
I think a bit. We'll ask a kind of a law-oriented question. So I really want to. So we're going through quite fundamental period at the moment, whether it's judiciary, lockdown, government. What do you want to ask you? What kind of advice would you give to the kind of the judicial fix we're in right now with the backlog, etc.? What kind of solutions do you think we should be looking at as a kind of legal community to fix this whole persistent problem of delay in judicial decision making?
You know, that's an excellent question. If you, I mean, the obvious ones is make more courts, have more judges, all of that. But, you know, that's going to take lots of time. So let me think and give you 2 or 3 thoughts that can start fixing the story tomorrow morning. 1, why do we have so much of pendency? Let's go to the first principles. We have so much of pendency because roughly 67 or 68% of all pending matters in all the courts in India, government is on one side or the other, government or their instrumentalities. Now, why are they there? They are there because of the 3 C's, the CBI, the CVC, and the CAG. Which officer, which bureaucrat will say, don't appeal and sign off on it? Because 6 years later or 10 years later, and we've seen that happen to the telecom secretary and the coal secretary, etc. recently, the CAG will say you lost so much of money. So one is, why can't government of India, anyway they lose most of the cases in the end, why can't they make a simple rule that, for example, which by the way, the tax department has started doing now, that if there's a matter is worth, say, 20 lakhs, and we lose it in the first level, no more appeal. So the officer doesn't have to fall back on anything, and it's not appealed, and the matter is over. If it's over 2 crores in the High Court, no more appeal. Then one more important aspect is these should not become precedents. They shouldn't become matters of law. The government should just scour the courts, look at those parameters, let there be a simple executive instruction, and they withdraw those cases. You will see a very large percentage of the court backlog going away. That's one. Second, we are stuck with a big problem of adjournments. We have adjournments all the time. Why can't everything is today, you know, you're bored. I mean, if you non-lawyers hearing this, judges, when they set up their case roster for the day, it's all digital. All they have to do is add one more thing, that I had 50 cases today. I heard 40 of them, and they're part heard or whatever. 10 were adjourned. 1 more. Why? Why were they adjourned? And that copy should go to that court's chief and to the Chief Justice of India. So you know the efficiency of the judge and where the whole story is happening. Third, we today, if some of you may have been to a court, you'll see one digital clock outside every courthouse, which says the case, the number of the case that is being heard. We should have two more. One, which says how many cases pending in this court and how many were disposed of yesterday. All of that you make a cumulative on top of the court. For example, if it's Delhi High Court, all the courts in Delhi High Court will then total it up, and on top of Delhi High Court's citadel, you'll have total cases pending in Delhi High Court and total disposed of yesterday. Similarly, you do that in all the courts in India. There will be transparency, number one. Two, there'll be competition. And that will start opening things up. Now, these are three very simple things. I can tell you, if you analyze it, there are a number of current courts in India. Current courts means the number of cases that have been disposed of, lesser cases were filed in that year. So if your pendency goes away, we'll get justice quicker than the wonderful Trump land. And this, so those are the, I can think of many more, but I think if you did these three, and that can be done Monday morning.
And what's holding us back from kind of implementing some of those solutions?
A lot of it has got to do with little knowledge. Two, it's also an old boys network system. You don't, for example, there are courts even today in the Supreme Court where one particular judge is disposing of 70, 80, 100 matters in a month. Brother judge is disposing of 3 matters in a month. But nobody knows this. So if this was brought out in the open and it made public, there's no contempt here, there's not doing anything. You're just telling how many you dispose. Yes, there will be courts will have complicated matters. Yes, there will be courts which will have, where there's lots of witnesses required, etc., etc. So let's leave that aside. Let's go apple for apple. And some of this, of course, artificial intelligence, big data analysis, all of those things can be brought in without legislation. And that can improve the whole system drastically. Okay.
Would that lead to any hastier judgment, sir, if we're moving so quickly?
Yes, that could be, again, it's a system of points. If they start giving, if you do more than 100 disposals a month, you get a bonus or something, you'll have a problem. Here also, if you want to show off and you dispose of more matters, you might have a bit of an issue, but there can always be a kind of a check and balance to see how things are going with big data analysis, etc. So there could be some system built. I mean, I don't have the exact ABC of it, but it can be built. But it'll be better than what we are doing right now.
Okay. And moving on from the judiciary kind of advice you could give right now. Obviously, we've been in lockdown coming up to more than 2 months, and in Maharashtra, it's probably going to get extended, and some other places extended. And we're now moving beyond kind of the COVID issues to more humanitarian economic problems. What kind of advice would you give the government at the moment with regards to easing out of lockdown and dealing with some of the kind of economic crisis we're now moving into?
I'd look at this a little more holistically. COVID, we don't know the end of it. COVID, we don't know enough. We're all shooting in the dark. And that I mean the entire world. We are trying our best. We are trying to do what works best, but that's fine. But the biggest fundamental issue, if you look at what COVID has done, and it's a great opportunity for Government of India to really now seize the opportunity and fix the problem. Now, what is the fundamental problem in India right now? We need good infrastructure. If we had good infrastructure, for example, we won't have this so-called, I don't know why they call it migrant, they are our countrymen, going back. Why do you need to build all the factories around Mumbai or Pune or Delhi? Why can't they be all over India? Because we don't have proper infrastructure. Now, to make proper infrastructure, you need long-term money. In the old days, we used to have the IFCI banks, we used to have the IDBI banks, we used to have the IIC, ICICIs of this world. Today, they don't exist. Today, you have 5-year money for 30-year projects. So, government of India needs to figure out a way. One, of course, is COVID. We need, now, let me go back a little bit. Look at what America has done. Not a great country to follow, at least as far as I'm concerned. But they've given 12% of their GDP as a largesse. They're giving salaries to the people who are jobless, etc., etc. Germany is given 16%. France is given 11%. Singapore is given 9%. Now, India, we have said 10%, but if somebody, I don't trust most of the economists of this world, they have their own views, but somebody said it actually is pretty close to 1%. Now, to do 10%, we need about $280, $290 billion. Does India have it? Maybe we do, maybe we don't. Maybe there'll be a resurgence. However, we have $1 trillion, as per Government of India's information, $1 trillion of Indian money illegally lying outside India. You bring it back to India today, they put you in jail. Why can't Government of India announce that please bring as much of money as you want into India? We will ask you no questions, a bit like the election bonds. We'll ask you no questions. It'll be fully confidential. You bring in the money, 15% you pay TDS. So let's say there's $1 trillion. Let's take that as a round figure. $150 billion you get on day one. 35% you give it to the guy or girl who brings it in. 50% you subscribe to, not because I look like one, but I've nomenclatured it, subscribe to an elephant bond. This is a 25, 30-year bond, which will have a coupon rate of, let's say, 200 basis points over LIBOR. Most Indians will be very happy to bring that money back, have a peaceful night of sleep, and not have to send their nephews and nieces to Dubai, Singapore, London, and have 200 basis over LIBOR. Now, this bond could be, now if you leverage that, you're looking at roughly $2 to $3 trillion of long-term money, and that takes care of all your infrastructure development. $285 billion give to COVID. Give it tomorrow, once the money comes in, I mean, and you're done for. I mean, it solves a whole lot of problems, and it takes care of this long-term financing in India, which is a big, see, look at America. It was eagle bonds. Why don't we have elephant bonds? I mean, what is the problem? Look at Europe. Look at Japan. All these countries, look at Korea. They built infrastructure with these long-term money available. Now, we need to do that, and sooner the better, is what I would say.
Do you think we will? I mean, is the government really kind of inclined to do that? Kind of move?
I thought about it. See, there is a. I mean, I'll put it on a lighter note. Our Prime Minister did say 15 lakh rupees har ki account mein dalenge. We haven't got a rupee. I can talk for myself and you, Vikas, because if you had a rupee free in your bank, we'd be talking different. Second, he also said, "Achhe din aayenge." But luckily, he never said when. So today, what will happen is that the main voters, the poorer ones especially, will say, "Ye Amiron ne sab badmashi kiya, abhi inko maaf kar diya." I would, if I was the Prime Minister, I would say that, look, when I said those "Achhe din aayenge" or 15 lakh dunga, I was Prime Minister for the first time. 5 years I have spent trying to, and he has tried, no doubt. I have tried to bring the money back, etc. But there's so many international laws of FATCA, KYC, exchange of information, which is all a fact. It's not a figment of anybody's imagination. मैं नहीं ला पाया. अब मैं इनके पैसों से आपके लिए बिजली घर और आपके लिए सड़क बना रहा हूं. Maybe it would work.
Okay. We're gonna, before we move on to some of the lighter round and I get my interrogator in, I want to ask you one question that you're an adventurer at heart. And you mentioned about the adventure company you set up as a kid. What is the next adventure for Rajiv Luthra?
I'm very, very convinced that if India has to really get to the next level, we need to set our education system correct. We need to really, we don't have enough schools, we don't have enough, I mean, it's a nightmare to get a nursery kid's admission. It's a nightmare to get into a good college. It's a nightmare. And, you know, all this nonsense of, and the number of people we are throwing up to go to higher education every year is mind-boggling. Roughly 18 to 20 million. Now, we are not producing that many colleges. Yeah, we're not producing. So we have to use technology. The whole digital learning, e-learning. So I'm on the board of a couple of colleges, board of governors, and also a curricula. For example, in law, nobody teaches you stress management. Once you become a lawyer, that's your biggest problem. Nobody teaches you international intellectual intelligence. Nobody teaches you that. Now, to use intellectual intelligence with a judge or with the arbitrator or with your wife or with your children or with your spouse, all of these areas you need it, but does anybody teach it? No. Because our entire education system is based on, you know, probably the Industrial Revolution, and we haven't changed very much.
Yeah, yeah.
So that needs to change, and we need the way we disseminate information. Now, of course, if you see now with the 60, 80 days of shutdown, e-learning has gone crazy. My two girls are going nuts trying to e-learn. Most of them switch their damn videos off and sleep. But
so do I.
but e-learning, then has the government thought that e-learning, there should be a regulator? We should be able to issue e-learning degrees. Now, will the Bar Council or, you know, the various other bodies that look at this, the University Grants Commission, etc., they should be working on it real time. That's what I want to, you know, once I hang up my boots and get onto a different mountain, that's the mountain I'd love to climb.
E-learning and transforming the education system here.
Yeah, just transforming the entire education system. I'm lucky I'm on the board of governors of the Brij Mohanlal University, which is a very forward-thinking bunch. And it's I would invite you, Vikas, when this thing opens up, come and visit the campus. It's actually mind-boggling. Wow. And our chancellor is Mr. Sunil Munjal, a very, very progressive man, and listens to all the new ideas. So I'm helping them with the curricula and all that. For example, I'm creating a system in 3-4 other universities also of patenting. One of the main ways universities like Harvard, etc., are funded is that they take a piece of the action from the patent. Why can't we do that in India? All our IITs, etc., they'd be, you know, free of all this interference, so-called, from ABC. They'll be financially independent, and they won't have to be sticking to the UGC, you know, 30,000 rupees salaries, etc., etc. You get the best professors in the world. You do so all of that can easily be. So we are doing that. We are actually real time doing it. We've got a dedicated bunch in our office that regularly goes, looks at all the so-called patents that kids are looking at these universities, tell them what is patentable and what is not, and then help them actually register the patent, and then make an agreement with the university, and then connect them. I'm also one of the co-founders of the Indian Angel Network, for example. Then also connect them to the IAN. They then commercialize it, and the university gets money either through royalty or outright sale. So things like that, that's the new mountain. Brilliant.
I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to bring in Tanisha now for the next round, which is the kind of more, the novel bit that we're bringing into Unsuited. Tanisha,